I drink. And you're right, you shouldn't drink it every day, you should drink it seasonally. Because that's when it tastes better anyway. That's when the cream's really thick. It's an amazingly nutrient-dense food source for raw animal food. Because our culture doesn't typically think about the gastronomic pleasures of, we gotta make sauerkraut, the gastronomic pleasures of raw animal food, unless we're talking sushi. But everybody likes dairy, or well, not everybody likes dairy, but a lot of people like dairy. And those people who think they're lactose intolerant oftentimes aren't lactose intolerant at all. They're simply not getting the lactase that comes in the milk naturally to digest the lactose. So people who have had dairy allergies or intolerances oftentimes will switch over to raw dairy and be like, wow, I don't have a problem, because the enzyme is now available to digest that milk protein. Any questions about raw dairy before we make sauerkraut?
So when is the season? Do tell when milk is the best.
Spring and summer.
Spring and summer.
Yeah.
Are there cultures that didn't evolve using dairy, and so that
Absolutely.
is because they're lactose intolerant these days?
Yes. A lot more cultures, though, that people think evolved eating some kind of dairy products, because cows are not the only ruminants. You know, people milked sheep and goats and bison and ox and, you know, all around the world. India, Africa, there are tribes in Africa, like the Maasai, a pretty well-known tribe in Africa, that basically for the men between adolescence and midlife, they're on a diet of only dairy and blood. That's it. These are the tallest, strongest, fastest warriors in the world, and all they eat is raw dairy products and blood.
On the other hand, in China, in parts of China, they don't eat dairy at all.
No, they have pigs in China, and they get their vitamin D from lard, from those foods. And seafood is very high in these fat-soluble activators, especially shellfish. So in other parts of the world where they didn't have dairy, they had shellfish. In the African tribes that were not dairying tribes, they eat insects. Insects are extremely high in these fat-soluble activators as well. The Native Americans, organ meats. So there was always some source. They called them sacred foods. In Switzerland, they would have a ceremony in the summer where they would take the cream from the milk of the cows that had been feeding at the glacier line. So just in the spring, the runoff would come down, it would feed that grass, they would eat that grass, then they would take that cream, turn it into butter, and they would put a wick in it and light it and do a ceremony, because they knew this was the life-giving butter, this was the immunity-giving butter that was going to see them through the long, dark winter. They were going to have adequate vitamin D all winter long, and they weren't going to end up in the springtime with a mouthful of cavities and infectious illnesses and people dropping dead of flu and all that sort of thing. It's not going to happen. So, all right, let's make sauerkraut. Alicia. Wish we had more time, but any other questions about Dr. Price's principles? If you're interested at all, which you must be a little bit or you would have got up and left, go to Weston A. Price Foundation. This is an organization that proliferates Dr. Price's work, and the other one is the Price Pottinger Nutrition Foundation. They're here in La Mesa. They're a repository of Dr. Price's work, all of his photographs, hundreds and hundreds of photographs of indigenous people, beautiful people, healthy people, people that lived into their 80s, 90s, and well beyond with all the teeth in their head, never died of cancer, heart disease, stroke, diabetes, anything like that. If you want to see these people, go online and go to either one of these sites. Just Google either one of these, and you'll get to see what truly healthy people look like. Okay, come, sauerkraut. So I wish I could say this came from La Milpa, Barry's farm, but it did not. It could have. I don't know why it didn't. But this is organic cabbage. And what we do, I'm going to show you how to make sauerkraut in like 10 minutes, and then we'll take some final questions. And this is really easy. This is really fast. You can do this every week, and you'll have a source of these beautiful microflora in your diet. Indigenous peoples always ate, not always, I should say, they often ate fermented vegetables with their cooked meat, when they would eat cooked meat. Their diet consisted of approximately 30% cooked food and 70% raw food, both animal and vegetable. Okay, so what you need to make sauerkraut is cabbage and salt, which ran away. Where did the salt run away to? Here it is. I like to use Celtic sea salt because it's from the sea, it's natural. It has all the trace minerals. You too will be expelled. Has all the trace minerals that occur in the sea. So there's about 83 different trace minerals and macrominerals in our body, in our blood. And they mirror the minerals that are in the ocean. So when you eat like Morton salt, you're getting sodium chloride. That's one. That's just one. That's why people have problems with salt. It's not because there's anything wrong with salt. Salt is just one mineral in a saline solution. Okay, so our bodies need all of those minerals. So in order to get all of them, you need to get salt that comes from the sea, or from someplace that was once the sea. Like there's the beautiful Himalayan salt. Has anybody seen the pink Himalayan salt that's available now? It's just gorgeous. Well, that was seawater once upon a time, a long, long time ago. Cabbage. You can keep the cores if you want. Just kitchen cleanliness. You do not need to sterilize anything because bacteria are a part of our life. They're a part of our world. They're a part of our ecosystem. We just have to learn to live with it. And we have to learn to exploit it to our benefit. Don't be afraid of bacteria. They're our friend. They're a part of us. Like I said, there are more cells, there are more beneficial bacteria cells in our body than there are human cells. We are mostly bacteria. You grate it, or you chop it, or you tear it with your teeth, whatever appeals to you. I don't know what they used back hundreds of years ago to make sauerkraut. I think they had some kind of a really cool barrel system where they'd have one man on either side and they'd do this kind of weird shaking thing, and then the kids would be there and holding the, I don't know, but they did something cool. Okay, you need a bowl, you need cabbage, you need a knife, you need a grater, or not. Alicia, you want to come grate? And then the other thing you need, this is not an absolute, but this really helps, is whey. Now this isn't something that you can buy, this is something you have to make. What do you make it out of? Raw dairy. You make it out of either yogurt, or you can use raw milk that's been clabbered. That's what I use. I just take half a gallon of raw milk, I put it in a 2-quart jar, and I leave it in my cupboard. Put the lid on, I leave it in my cupboard for about 2 or 3 days. At that point it separates into curds and whey. Curds are like cream cheese or farmer cheese. They're delicious. It's much more delicious than any kind of cream cheese you can buy in the store. You can use herbs in it. I like to use smoked salmon and dill and use some nice Celtic sea salt. And you have an incredibly nutrient-dense, bacteria-dense food source. The whey is very medicinal. You can drink it. You can use it to make your fermented vegetables. You can make fermented drinks with it, like Beet Kebabs, which is a traditional drink made with just chopped beets, whey, and salt. Yeah, so what you do is you just, as soon as we get our, actually we've got more than, does anybody want to volunteer to come up and grate some cabbage? Come on up. Do you do this where you come from, in Australia?
We have, yeah, I was just going through my head what kind of pickled things, because in my parents' generation are very traditional, healthy, pure kind of, you know.
Yeah.
Although I'm so terrible at using, I just wanted to have clean hands before I touch food.
Yeah, don't worry.
I'm doing it.
Come on over here.
That's the whole hand sanitizer.
I know, we've been brainwashed. We've been brainwashed. Are there really deadly bacteria and viruses? Yes. Why?
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I didn't hear that. Too many people spoke at once. Somebody, just one. Because